Welcome to the Alaska Realtor live stream. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and my mission, as always, is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And on today's live stream, we're actually very lucky to be joined by Joe and Zach Bramante. They are kind of my go-to people anytime we're talking about actual off-grid living. And these guys live in South Central Alaska. They run a great YouTube channel, and they also run the Caribou Lodge up in the kind of the Talkeetna area, about 20 miles outside of the Denali National Park. So, you know, they're the real deal when it comes to anything off-grid or kind of roughing it Alaska style. So, guys, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we're great. We're glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Hey, well, my pleasure. So real quick, a little housekeeping for those of you in the comment section. If you have any questions, concerns about kind of the off-grid living, these are going to be your subject experts. So do not hesitate to throw any questions or concerns you have into the comment section, and really take advantage of the experience of being able to get your questions answered from our in-house experts right here. Now, guys, let's go and just jump into it real quick while we still got power. So
sounds good.
All right. So first off, and I know this is kind of the $1 million question. We would spend the entire time just on this, but how did y'all end up living off grid in the interior of Alaska?
Yeah. Do you want me to field that one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So it goes back quite a ways. We've been off grid for 9 years and let's see. We knew the people that owned this lodge prior to us owning it. We knew them for quite a few years, since 2000, 2002, something like that. And Zach and I would come out here in our younger years, teenage and early 20s, and help them do whatever they needed to do, guide hikes. It started off with the harder chores, washing dishes, mowing the yard, and even helping to dig outhouse holes. And so we knew this place out here. We fell in love with it. It's hard not to. And so as time passes and we get older, we get married, we're bringing our spouses out here just because it's such a special place. And the previous owners were trying to sell it. They were getting to retirement age. Their bodies were just telling them it's time to be done. Anybody that has done any research into off-grid living or looking into it or doing it themselves, they know that it's a very physical life. And so the previous owners were feeling it in their bodies. So they knew it was time to move on. If you have anything to add, Zach, at any point, just jump in. But so Zach and the previous owner were talking, and they were discussing this place being sold, and we were all just kind of brokenhearted about it, thinking like, man, we're not going to be able to come out here and just enjoy, friends that live in this beautiful place.
They had run the lodge for like 22 years.
Right.
And just getting ready. They wanted to sell it, like Joe said, but selling an off-grid property with the potential for income, it's like you're looking for a really niche market.
Yeah.
So he put his arm around my shoulder and he said, well, Zach, I'll give you a really good price on the place. And we had a good laugh about it, but he wasn't completely joking. So if you fast forward from July of 2013 to March, by that comment he made to me before we left on the float plane to go back to town, fast forward to March of 2014, and we had put money down on the place to take over. So for Joe and I, it was like a dream come true to say, hey, we've guided hikes and camping trips out here. We know nothing about the off-grid lifestyle, but the whole tourism thing, talking to people, that kind of aspect of it was fun. So then, I guess that's kind of how we got out here. We were born and raised in Montana. Both of us kind of made our way up to Alaska, around 2004, 2005, and then bought the lodge in 2014.
we knew the outdoors. We were raised in the outdoors. We were raised hunting, and so that kind of stuff wasn't new to us. But the off-grid living, as Zach alluded to, was new.
There's been a lot of learning and making mistakes.
Yeah,
I mean, you said we're, your go-to guys for off-grid living, but we only know what we know, and we only can speak to our experience. Like the other day, we're taking apart our spring line and cleaning out all of our filters, disconnecting hoses, because our summer water source freezes solid. Like it froze solid 3 days ago. And so I'm like Joe said, the off-grid living lifestyle can be really physical, but I also was thinking about family members that live all over the country thinking, I'd rather be tearing down my spring line out here in the bush of Alaska than commuting, to my office job that I used to have. So there's pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess one question real quick. So kind of give us an idea for kind of the Caribou Lodge, its remoteness, because we've talked about it before on a podcast, but I don't think a whole lot of people appreciate how remote you guys are, and why I say you guys are actually the few like real and true off-grid people that I can actually that I talk to. So,
sure.
Can you kind of
we don't just
give folks an idea?
Yeah, we don't just hook up solar panels, disconnect from the local electric company, and call ourselves off grid.
Yeah, we're, as far as the remoteness of our location, no roads to it. Truly, there's no way you can drive a vehicle out here. It's only a float plane in the summer months. We are on a lake that is big enough to accommodate most float planes. And then in the winter, when everything freezes over, there's a lot of swamps and creeks and a river in between us and the road system. So when all that freezes over and then we get enough snow, we can actually get in and out via snow machine. So yeah, that's we're what is it, a 15-minute flight from the nearest float plane service in Talkeetna. So it's not a terribly long flight, but it's long enough to where we're remote. It would be an all-day hike and a grueling hike if you were going to hike out.
In the winter, you could strap on snowshoes, maybe make it to a road system in less than 8 to 9 hours, I suppose. In the summer, it would be an absolute nightmare. You'd probably be hiking for 12 to 15 hours. My wife and I were having a conversation a couple of winters ago. The girls, we have 2 little girls that were noticeably getting cabin fever because we hadn't been to town in months. And a town would mean I had to get on the phone and charter a ski plane to come land on the lake and pick us up. And so finally we were able to create our own sort of ice road, I guess, for, just because people know that term because of reality television. But we could create our own snow machine trail. And we had a conversation like, if it's above 0 degrees tomorrow, we'll hop on the snowmobiles and take the girls into town. And that's takes us probably 2 hours to get to town. And we took them out for hot chocolate. We went to the library, and then the sun's getting ready to set because we only have 4 hours of daylight, and we hop on the snowmobiles and we cruise back home. So that's kind of that's like off grid, taking the kids to town, kind of a story, maybe to give you an idea. So
yeah, that's and did that kind of cure the cabin fever, or at least help for a little bit?
It actually did for a while. Yeah, for sure.
Someone
Someone else making their hot chocolate besides themselves.
It makes everything feel special.
Yeah, for
sure. So what did y'all's family think of when you guys said you were going to be taking over the lodge and kind of stepping into this role and the lifestyle up there?
Close family, siblings, and mom and dad at the time loved it. They were all 100% on board. They were also familiar with the lodge and the previous owners. So the fact that it was kind of going to stay in the family, essentially, they were super excited about it. most extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, thought we were crazy, just straight up.
Still do.
Yeah, they still do. So we've had, I mean, you could see we're in one of our guest cabins here. It added for a nice backdrop for this live stream.
There's so much bedding in here. The acoustics are amazing.
That's right. But it's you know, we have pretty nice accommodations, but we've had a family member, and he goes, you guys are just camping, right? And it was like, hey, I have a hot shower, and I can plug my cell phone in. So, but still, a lot of family members think we're just crazy. So
it is a real bummer for our siblings because we're super close. So then geographically, you move this far off the grid, and we're close with our siblings. So then we don't get to see each other near as much. My mother-in-law was not thrilled at all, just taking the grandbabies further away. But they've all been out here. My mother-in-law has been out here a couple times now, and you get over the nerves of hopping on a float plane to come visit the grandkids. And
it's hard, as Zach is alluding to. Just to give the viewers an idea, we're roughly 2.5 hours from Anchorage. That would be a drive in a vehicle north, and then a small float plane ride or whatever. And so it's not terribly far, but just because we are off the road system, it makes it seem so much farther. The access is a lot harder, and so you just can't drive down to grandma's or cousins or a friend's house just on a whim, and it makes it feel a lot farther away.
Yeah, it sounds like you just have to be just very, very intentional, like with every trip that you do. I mean, you guys were talking about
Absolutely.
having to like plan ahead of time and create like almost a ice road trucker scenario just to get to town for hot chocolate. So
yep, pretty much.
Yeah, a lot of planning for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So what was that first year like for y'all? As you're kind of getting into it, I imagine the previous owners tried to kind of coach you guys as best they could just on what to expect. But hearing about it's one thing, and then going and do it is another. So what was that first year like for you guys?
Oh man,
Absolutely.
Actually, you can read all the books, you can watch all the vlogs, you can do all the research until you're actually here. It's like
it would be like taking an online course for swimming. It just doesn't apply until you actually get in the water.
So Joe can start because him and his wife moved out onto the property like 2.5 years before we did.
To be honest, so my wife and I didn't have kids at the time, and it was just us two, and it was like it was just euphoric. It was amazing. Our first year out here was a lot of exploring. I've never read much my whole life, but I had time to read books. We would play games together. Like I said, a lot of exploring, and I would go into my workshop. We have a little workshop on the property out here, start a fire in there and work on projects, just woodworking projects and stuff. But as far as the lodge business, I'll be honest, it was a lot of fake it till you make it type of stuff. Just pretend like you know what you're doing until you actually learn. But as far as the off-grid part, going and getting firewood, keeping a fire going, harvesting water off of the lake, that stuff, it kind of came natural to me and my wife, and we absolutely loved it. It was just so much fun. As Zach was saying earlier, as far as like rather being out here dealing with our frozen spring line versus commuting. And that was what I kept telling myself, because I had done that. I had commuted from the Valley, which is Palmer and Wasilla area in Alaska, commuted from there to Anchorage. And Zach was doing that first couple of years that my wife and I were out here. And I just kept telling myself, anytime I had a hard day, something didn't go quite as planned, I just kept reminding myself, I'm not commuting. I'm not having to deal with bad roads, terrible drivers, or a 9-to-5. And so it was great. As far as when Zach and his wife moved out here, maybe a little different story, but.
Well, someone had to fund the whole shenanigan because our down payment was pretty much all the money we could scrounge together. And so we a lot of help from the previous owners as far as hands-on. Hey, Joe, here's how you disconnect the spring line in the fall and all that kind of stuff. But on the business end of things, they were also helping us. Here's this travel agency. Here's all the keys to TripAdvisor and the website and all that kind of stuff. And so as Joe and his wife were boots on the ground taking care of all that stuff, I continued my job in Anchorage, but also doing all the back end stuff for the lodge, meeting with travel agents, taking bookings, coordinating air taxis. So that was fun for me because I could easily balance all of that. But then in April of 2017, my wife and I and our two kids moved out full time. And Joe and Bonnie had to move out of the lodge so Alyssa and I could move in, and a whole story there. But I hit the ground running because by May and June of 2017, we were just doing the tourist thing. And so tourists would step off the float plane. You'd say, "Welcome to Caribou Lodge." And I'd done that since I was a teenager. So that was easy. Joe and his father-in-law were building a cabin for Joe. And then I pretty much did like 95% of all the guiding and hosting that summer. And so it was just like quit my job and immediately got busy with tourism out here. And I loved it because I changed my loafers and slacks for rain jackets and hiking boots. And so I was in my element. The problem was not until the last guest left in September, October comes around, and it was way too quiet, way too calm and peaceful, and way too boring. And I was like, I started getting really bad cabin fever really quick. So I only lasted about,
so real quick, for people who might not know what cabin fever is, you can kind of explain what that is. What some of the symptoms are, if you would.
Man, what are the symptoms for being like having the cabin fever? So when you haven't done anything out of the ordinary, you could walk around, stay in, you could be in the cabin of a ship, or you could be in a tiny little backwoods cabin. You haven't stepped outside in days. Right. You haven't gone down to the lake to go fishing. You haven't been on a hike. You just start staying inside, and your mind starts playing tricks on you to where you just
you start to get super anxious.
You anxious and irritable. We start taking out our own frustration on each other. I heard a saying that says a man needs a certain amount of stress in his life every day, and if he doesn't have that, he creates it. Yeah. And so when you start creating stress, and I'm more of a high stress individual. So October and into November, it was weird. I had a loud ringing in my ears that I couldn't get rid of. I started feeling depressed.
Really?
Yeah. It was weird. Yeah. Cabin fever is no fun. I asked the previous owners, how did you deal with cabin fever? And he goes, whiskey, comic books, and dance parties. Like they just crank up some old music. Back in the 90s, there was no Spotify or iTunes. So they would turn on their cassette player, crank it up loud, and just dance around the lodge just to blow off cabin fever. Yeah. Go run outside in your underwear, jump in the snow. You got to do something to kind of like break out of like this weird
a funk,
mundane funk. Yeah. So anyways, I got over that. Long story short, it was a rough first fall, but now I really appreciate the peace and quiet. But coming from a busy corporate job in Anchorage, busy tourist season, to absolutely nothing was like a weird kind of a culture shock. So ever since 2017, we've been out here full time along with Joe and his wife. And it's been good.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to kind of hear you talk about like how challenging it was to go from like really, really busy to just silence. Because I've talked with a couple people about that before, and that's something that does come up on a regular basis, is just saying, hey, You knew it was real the second you had like that first night, and it was just silent, nothing.
Yeah.
While
Yep.
cars driving by, just silence. Like that's,
Yeah.
I've been told that's really when it hits you.
Yep. Yeah, no light pollution, no cul-de-sac noise, no anything. Boy, I tell you what though, for Jamin's people watching this realtor YouTube channel, once you get over that, there is nothing better. If you really want off-grid property, you will not miss the light pollution and noise pollution. You get a jet flying over, and that's the only thing you hear for like 8 hours. It's just incredible.
A quick
That's an
story
event.
about
Yeah, exactly. That's
a quick story about the noise or the lack of noise out here. One time we had this guest out here, and she kept asking Zach, "What's this noise? I keep hearing this noise, and I cannot figure out what it was. It was driving her nuts." And Zach's like, "Man, what does it sound like?" And try to describe it to me. She's like, "I don't know. It's kind of this buzzing noise. Like I can't quite place it." And come to find out, on the front of her cabin, the deck railing, we have flower pots hanging. It was a big bumblebee buzzing. And Zach came over and helped, and he goes, "Susan," or whatever her name was, "it's this bumblebee." When she found out it was the bumblebee, she flipped her lid, because she's like, it's never been quiet enough for me to enjoy the buzzing of a bee.
Yeah, never thought about that.
She never thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah, she'd never heard a bumblebee that loud. She didn't know that they made that much noise. So that's pretty special when you think about it. You're like, well, welcome to the wilderness, I guess. I don't.
That's wow. That's pretty indicative of I guess our society in general.
Right.
No kidding. Yeah.
So we've talked about this a little bit, but what is the environment like up there? Because I mean, there's South Central Alaska, and then you start getting a little bit closer to like Denali, Talkeetna, and it's starts to get a little bit more real as you get a little bit more interior. So you guys kind of describe the environment a bit.
Yeah, so we are sitting on what's considered alpine tundra. We are above tree line. So if anyone has ever had wanderlust and started Googling pictures of Denali National Park, that's pretty much it. You got blueberry bushes that come up not quite to your calf. You've got willow bushes that can come up maybe 5 feet, kind of scrape you on the shoulders as you're kind of walking through the willows. And then it's just wide open. We've got the forest below us. When we need to go get firewood, we hook up the freight sleds to the snow machines and cruise down into the forest, which we have to drop several hundred feet in elevation to do so. So we are, Jamin, like you said, South Central Alaska. We are where South Central meets Denali region.
Interior.
Where the interior region starts. So I don't think there's any permafrost right where we're at. Yeah. But if you just go a tiny bit further north, there's going to start to be little pockets of permafrost more and more as you get toward Fairbanks. Denali National Park is right next to us. So then on north-facing slopes, you would start to see permafrost, which is the permanently frozen, icy layer of soil under the grass and the tundra and all the moss and stuff. So that's us above tree line. You could spot a caribou on a hillside from 4 miles away. Yeah. There's just no trees. And the other night we're watching.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, I had this photo from y'all's website I was going to share a bit later here. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so the big tree right there in the front of the picture, that was a 168-year-old spruce that we had to cut down because it was affected by beetle kill. Other than that, there's just a couple of sparse little spruce trees that grow, maybe 20 feet tall or so, but that's about it. You've got alder bushes, and you can just see for miles. So,
man, that's I can understand. You guys grew up in Montana. I mean, that kind of feels like a big sky country right there, honestly.
For sure. Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they coined that term, but we got it too, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's go and get this real quick. Got a question here from from Monica. Can people come out to the lodge during the winter? Oh, never thought of that before. I guess.
Yeah.
Could. Okay.
Yeah. So for years and years, Mike and Pam, the original owners, the previous owners, always had winter tourism. For several years we did, Monica, but because we homeschool our kids, it just got to be too much. We had to just like uproot everything about personal life. The kids had to stop school, and then we would host for February and March, and we just had to draw a line for us personally, and so we haven't done winter tourism in several years.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that's I find really unique about y'all's setup is you actually like do homeschool like families out there, and that does make it kind of different about y'all's operation. It's not just like the big corporately owned lodge. It's actually family owned and operated. So,
I mean the kids usually around Anchorage and Wasilla start school. I don't know, first week of September. My kids can't do that because we're still in tourist season up until middle of September. So then they get a start. Third week of September is kind of normal, so they start a couple weeks behind. Yeah, so we go nonstop for 4 months with tourism, and then my wife changes hats from lodge bookkeeper and all that kind of stuff right into homeschool mom. I think she started like overnight. I don't even think she took a day off. So yeah, and then while she starts school, Joe's wife is like winterizing stuff, taking flower pots down, winterizing the garden area. Joe and I do things like get the snowmobiles ready, winterize the spring line. Everybody's just like we haven't had a day off since June started. Yeah. So I mean, tourists have been long gone, but there's always something to do.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think that really can't be overstated too. Like it's an actual like operation that you guys have going on, and I mean everyone's kind of got their role that they need to be able to actually do. I mean that's.
Well, I would think for Caribou Lodge we've joked about it before, half joking. It's a facade of what actually goes on out here, because we say, hey, welcome to Caribou Lodge. You've got first class accommodations, all inclusive. Welcome to the wilderness. And we're going to guide you hiking in bear country. And then once all the tourists leave is when the actual off-grid living starts.
Sure.
You're hauling water from the lake to do laundry, and you're, keeping a fire going in your house nonstop because it's not getting over high 30s this time of year. And, so the off-grid living, the thing that people see in the summer only happens for 4 out of the 12 months a year. So
yeah, that checks out. So how cold does it get up there for you guys during the winter time, and like sunlight and all that other stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sunlight, that's the fun story. I'll hit temperature first. It can easily hit 30 below out here. I've seen that on the thermometer at least once a year. It can last up to a week of 30 below temperatures. That's not the norm for us.
There always seems to be one cold snap though.
Yeah. We can have cold snaps that'll be below zero for a week or two, and that'll happen several times a year. But I would say average temperature in the winter out here is anywhere from high single digits to the teens.
Yeah, maybe 20. I mean, it doesn't get that much warmer.
We talk about our kids kind of get gypped for snowball making and snowman making, because we don't have good snowball snow out here. The kind of snow that you can pick up and pack and make a good snowball. It just doesn't happen. It's always sugary, always powdery, because it's colder and dry.
Now, we don't get nearly as cold as Fairbanks, as some of your viewers know. -30 is probably the coldest we've ever seen it out here if there's no wind chill. The wind chill can bring it down even colder.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the benefit to being in South Central and not up by Fairbanks. Unless you really have this love affair with -60, then you could go further north. But around here, -30 is kind of our coldest cold snap.
Yeah. Then the sunlight. Right now we're at, I think I was looking, we're right around 12 hours of sunlight a day. And it's always been interesting to me that the sun here in Alaska, it doesn't matter what time of year it is, 12 months a year, it always rises at an angle. If you're down in the lower 48, most of the time you can watch it rise above on the horizon, kind of straight up, and then it sets straight down. But here in Alaska, it always comes up at an angle. And what that does is that gives you about an hour of, let's call it twilight or daylight prior to sunrise, and about an hour of daylight after sunset. So that helps on the long winter days.
Yeah, you have to take advantage of it, or else you don't get anything done if you're waiting for the sun to come up.
So June 21st, right where we're at, I think we're on the latitude 62. We're getting 21 hours?
Just under 21 hours.
21 hours of actual sunlight. So daylight, it's 22, 23 hours of daylight. And then shortest day of the year, December 21st, you're looking at, now right where we're sitting at the lodge, it's a little bit different than, say, Talkeetna or the valley, which is Wasilla and Palmer, because we kind of have a little bit of a mountain where the evening sun would be. So where Talkeetna would be getting 4 to 4.5 hours of sunlight on December 21st, we're getting about 3.5.
Yeah, 3 hours and 26 minutes, but who's counting?
Yeah.
We're like in just a little bit of a bowl, and so the sun, we don't get the greatest amount of sun, but 3:26.
And December 21st, when does it rise? 11:16
a.m.
11:16. Like Zach said, I don't know why we know these exact numbers. And then it sets like at is it 2?
Just like 2:30.
Yeah, 2:30.
But the twilight hour on either side of sunrise and sunset, you still, if you need to get chores done that day, you have to take advantage of twilight, because that gives you 5.5 hours of being able to actually see outside, which is doable if the kids want to go sledding or you need to get something done. School is done, but if school can be done by lunchtime, then the kids still have a couple hours to play outside and stuff. So, and we've taken the whole family, hop on the snowmobiles, cruise up on top of the hill. You get another hour of sunlight if you're up on top of the hill. So we've done that just because that's another thing to stave off cabin fever. Fill a Stanley thermos with some cocoa, cruise up to the top of that hill, and you get another hour.
Try to get some more vitamin D,
Yeah. And so I think that might be when our family thinks we're crazy.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I could see that. I mean, one thing, because the coldest I think it got in Wasilla this past winter was like -20, which it's not
cold.
negative. Yeah, it's cold. Like, that's cold enough where you step outside and your lungs never freeze, but it dries it out like instantly.
You feel it. You feel it right away.
Yeah, there's almost like a certain level of like panic that starts to set in.
Yeah.
Yeah, any Southerners watching who have never sucked in air at 20 below zero, you don't know. You feel like you got ice crystals in your lungs. It's a special kind of feeling, that's for sure.
Yeah, I remember because it was it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. I was going out for a run. That's when it was like -20 out, and like I had the moment just staring off into the dark. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I fall in this dark. -20 out here. I don't know if anyone's ever going to find me.
Yeah, no one will see you until the sun rises after 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's like, ugh. But anyway, let's get to some questions here. Quick comment real quick here from Quarter Sister. So, when I used to live in the middle of nowhere in the Colorado Rockies, I learned to appreciate all the wild creatures, and even my sense of smell changed. I don't know. Have you guys noticed like any superpower changes with your senses too, or?
Oh man, I can't say that I have.
No, I would say hearing. Zach had mentioned earlier about that ringing in his ear. I had a similar experience. It didn't bug me as much, but I read up on it a little bit. And when you're living in town in cities where there's noise, it's car noise, horns honking, sirens, anything, even the sound of your washing machine or your refrigerator running or a vacuum or whatever else, your eardrum will reverberate for up to a month. Everybody's a little bit different, but it can reverberate like a snare drum for up to a month. And so when I moved out here and there's no sound, I don't have a vacuum running, lack of electricity, don't have an active washing machine inside the lodge, and all these different things, no car noise, no nothing else. You can hear that reverberation. It's so quiet. What's the phrase? The silence is deafening.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where it came from. Because the reverberation in your ear from all those previous noises play out for 3 weeks to a month. And so I think my hearing maybe got a little bit better, or maybe that's just a placebo effect, but I felt like it anyways.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was part of my ears ringing situation after the loud summer calmed down. After that reverberation stops, you kind of get in touch with your spidey senses as far as hearing. I don't know. I mean, I can't be sure that my sense of smell got any better or anything like that, but I definitely know what he's talking about. People ask us all the time where we went to university. How do you know so much about the flora and fauna? And just like this person commenting here, you go back into the backwoods long enough and it's just it's natural. You're going to learn about the plants and you're going to learn about the animals because you live right with them now. I mean, we had black bear walk right through the front yard. Just like, oh yeah, it's not it is our property, but the bears don't know that. So you just kind of become more one with nature and all that. And you definitely sense that.
And you have time to learn about it too. When I lived in town, and I know this is true of Zach too, there's the hustle and bustle of busy life, appointments, work, everything else. And you see nature around you in your car, commuting, whatever, on your early morning run. But typically you don't have time to stop and look at it or even research it. And out here, we're on a hike, we're going and getting firewood, and we're like, oh, what's this plant? Let's take a picture of it. And then we go back to the lodge and we have a bunch of plant books. We research, we look into it. Oh, this is cool that you can eat this plant. Not only can you eat it, there's some medicinal purposes too. And so you just get this wealth of knowledge because you've taken time to slow down and actually research what's surrounding you.
Yeah, for sure. We know what they're talking about.
I like that. So got a question here from Mr. Thomas Fry. How often do you get to see bears / wildlife?
Quite often.
Not always from the house. We get lazy and we get our binoculars out while we're wearing our bunny slippers. And we're like, well, I don't see anything. But every time we go out, we've got several hills. We just take off on a short little 1/4 mile hike from the house. 90% of the time we're going to see something. The moose population is down. We saw a small number of caribou this year, and bear. We saw bear almost every day. So even
quite a few of those bear we did see right from the property.
Yeah, guests would wake up in the morning and be on their way into the lodge for breakfast, and we would have a spotting scope set up waiting for them, and we'd say, hey, there's a bear over on the hill eating blueberries. And so I think bear was the kind of our moneymaker this year, for lack of a better term, because all the guests got to see bear. We're right at that border where the black bear don't go too much further north so much. So mostly we see black bear, and we saw a good handful of grizzly bears this year, moose and caribou. And almost every day we go out, we're going to see something. And if we're feeling lazy, we may get lucky and see something from the house. We got big picture windows overlooking the lake. So we may get lucky, but sometimes we got to hike a little bit.
A lot of birds and waterfowl too. We'll get eagles, osprey, a lot of ducks on the lake, loons, stuff like that. And those are almost an everyday thing too, just watching the birds fly by or float on the lake. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Have you guys had any like close bear encounters up there?
No dangerous
Yeah,
ones.
nothing. We've had bear right on the property. We've also had bear on our porch, kind of knocked our barbecue around a little bit. We did one year, we had this one bear that was getting into our underground cellar, kind of some people call it a root cellar or a dry cellar outside, kind of underground. And for whatever reason, most of the bear leave us alone on the property. They kind of give us a wide berth, but this in particular bear liked human stuff.
She was looking for trouble.
It knew right away what it was looking for, and it smelled the food in the cellar, broke into it 2 or 3 times, and we had to dispatch that bear because it wasn't going to stop. So not dangerous,
not dangerous for us,
but it caused destruction on our property. So thankfully, I was able to actually harvest that bear and got back the food that it stole from us. So
we always utilize bear meat. I mean, that's something that we would never waste.
Yeah.
But it was that was a pretty rare situation because most bears, we call them good bears and bad bears. All the longtime Alaskan sourdoughs that have been doing this a lot longer than us know exactly what a bad bear is. And when we've been out on our camping trips, our backcountry trips with our clients, we always carry a firearm and bear spray, and we've never had to ever use either. So we've been fortunate. You take all the precautions you can. I think it's because Joe and I talk so loud. And then we're on a hike, we're on these multi-hour day hikes with our guests, and everybody's talking and laughing and asking questions. And that probably hinders us from having any really exciting encounters.
Yeah, because I mean, you guys are talking about how quiet it is out there. And I mean, imagine how loud we must sound to bears and wildlife, where that's their default setting, and then we come along.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you guys kind of talking about the kind of like bears up in that area. It kind of reminds me of this past weekend. I was over in Seward, hiked up to the Harding ice fields, and I was coming down, lost track of the trail. And so I was like, you know what? It's okay. I know the general area.
Yeah.
I'm picking my way down there. And, I see a couple blueberries along the way. So of course you got to stop and harvest those. And I look down and I see there are 4 or 5 people on the trail just staring up at me as I'm trundling my way down the hill. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Okay, I get it, guys. I lost the trail. I'm not proud of this, but what do you want from me? But I get down there and they're like, did you not see the bear that was right next to you on the ridge? I was like, there was a bear?
Wow.
There? It's I thought they were kidding. They're like, no, seriously, there was a bear right there. It's like, oh, how close? We thought you were trying to take a selfie with it. It's like, oh man.
Oh my gosh.
I've heard stories like that.
You just don't know what's out there sometimes. So yeah, situational awareness.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes if you're not, and that's why when people hike alone, bear bells have become more and more popular, because you got to let the bear know you're coming. If you're hiking by yourself, you're just going after blueberries, maybe not singing to yourself or talking loud. A friend of ours was hiking out from his remote cabin and must have woken up a bear just walking by, and the bear kind of got his wits about him, came out onto the trail and started running up behind him. And so you just never know what you're going to walk by. That's why talking loud and jingling the bells. We don't like the bells personally, but if you're going to be by yourself.
For newcomers to Alaska, don't listen to all long-timer Alaskans, because we joke about those bells, those bear bells, as dinner bells. You'll hear that joke, and you'll also hear that bear spray is used to season yourself for the bear. Don't listen to those people. Bear bells do work. Bear spray does work. They are annoying, like Zach said, but if you can make that noise while you're on a trail, typically, not all the time, but typically it will alert the bear that you're in the area, and that bear doesn't want to be there, so he'll skedaddle.
We've seen big 700 pound, I would guess at least 700-pound boar grizzly bears stand up on their hind legs within 300 yards of us and catch wind of us and then just take off running the other direction.
Yeah.
They really don't. I mean, unless you've got a bad bear looking for trouble, they really just want to be left alone so they can pig out on blueberries and stuff like that. So even with the big, intimidating looking ones, he took off running like, we scared him just by smelling like a human. So,
but like you were saying,
taking
Jamin,
precautions.
And the situational awareness.
Yeah.
Whether you have bear spray, a gun, or bear bells, always being aware of what's around you. Don't just start focusing on your feet on the trail or off in La La Land somewhere. If you're out in bear country, you need to be aware. You need to be paying attention.
Well, we didn't really. We specialize in offering guided hiking and guided camping because people want to see Alaska backcountry and they don't want to do it by themselves. You show up, you fly into the Ted Stevens Airport, you go to Cabela's, you buy a can of bear spray, and I guarantee you 99% of people don't know how to use it right. So we're here so people can enjoy the outdoors. And I was hiking with a guy the other day who had done a bunch of hiking by himself. And he goes, man, my stress level is so much lower today because you're out here with me with your bear gun. And, there should be a little anxiety when you're in bear country. You have to have a little respect for the creature. Yeah. And what happened to you on the Harding ice field it wasn't because you were being stupid. That's just bears. Sometimes they smell you. Sometimes they know you're there, and they'll leave you alone if they get left alone. So,
yeah, I mean, my theory, for me anyway, I feel like you're probably more likely, at least if you're going on some hike going up a mountain, you're probably more likely to run into a bear on the way down than the way up. Because the way up, it's like a completely new foreign territory. You're more likely to be making noise and conscious and situationally aware.
Sure.
On the way down, though, you're like, oh, I've seen all this before. There's nothing here. So you just don't make any noise.
Yeah, you're just going down like kind of mindlessly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
sure.
real quick,
well, and for us, we're born and raised in Montana. And so we were always on high alert for mountain lions, or what some people would call cougars. And dealing with a black bear is way easier than dealing with a mountain lion. So I'd take a black bear or grizzly bear over a mountain lion any day.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Like, yeah, that's actually something I was thinking about on the way up. It's like, man, I'm sure glad I don't have to worry about mountain lions, because that's a predator that's
our oldest brother. Our oldest brother was almost killed by one. So we know, it was stalking him. It was 15 feet behind him, and the pounce, that whole cat's shoulder blades kind of pointing up kind of position, getting ready to jump. I mean, it scared the daylights out of him. So we know the importance of, if we ever go back to Montana to visit, our spidey senses start tingling, looking for mountain lions again.
Yeah, well, luckily we don't have those here. Real quick question from John. How much does it cost for your groceries to have your groceries delivered? Okay. So we can go off of that. How about this? Just groceries in general. I'm assuming there's not a weekly grocery run. So
yeah. So in the summer there is. And
weekly.
Then weekly, yeah.
Because of the lodge and the guests.
Yeah, like nonstop supplies being brought up from Anchorage, with weekly supply flights being flown in. And then, like you said, that's only 4 months out of the year. So the other 8 months out of the year, we try to plan a trip into town maybe once every other month. I mean, we load up ice chests, we load up the pantry, we load up the root cellar. And so you don't have to go to Costco hopefully at least once a month.
Yeah.
But that grocery, so he wants to know the pretty much the air taxi. Yeah. So we're probably on average, they don't charge us by weight. I would say 300. Sometimes we got to use a float plane. Sometimes we got to use a helicopter. So when you add $300 to every load of groceries from Costco, it kind of hurts. You're just like,
I mean,
man, you got to add
Or-
those air taxi costs into your grocery budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to make sure you don't forget anything. You go over your list twice and 3 times, because if you don't get it on that load, you're just not going to get it. So,
And it's like, well,
yeah,
I guess we got no
grocery bill
toilet
is
paper
astronomical.
till the tourists come back.
yeah, I tell you what, that was
Exactly.
an interesting, 2020 COVID when that hit in March of 2020. We do what we call a breakup list every March and April. We want to get enough groceries into the lodge before the snowmobile trail goes to garbage. We can't do it anymore. And then you can't get a ski plane on the lake because now the ice is starting to melt and rot. And so it's not safe for a ski plane. So we do that breakup season, and it's about 2 months. So we try to get several bags of flour, a couple cases of toilet paper, and many other things. And that was super difficult.
We had people commenting. We posted something. I had no idea even about it. March of 2020. Everybody's fighting over toilet paper. And I just happened to take a picture of my wife coming out of the pantry, and people started commenting on the toilet paper that she had a roll of toilet paper under her arm, and there was a bunch in the photo behind her in the pantry. I'm like, maybe I should delete that photo because people are going to start coming in, fly into the lodge just to take our toilet paper. Because we had like 3 stacks of it from Costco, because that's just what we do. That's what you do if you live off grid. You say, hey, I don't want to go to Anchorage for 3 months. What do I need to do to be, I wouldn't say 100% self-reliant, but what do I do to stay off the grid for 3 months? Well, I mean, unless you want to dig under the snow to find some old alder leaves, you're going to need some toilet paper. And so that's part of, planning ahead, making sure you got your air taxis lined up when you need to charter a flight for groceries. If you're going to live off grid, building materials make sure your budget for building materials. If you had to fly in enough materials for a cabin, all those materials strapped to a helicopter, I would say you got to more than double the cost of your cabin. For us, and for a lot of people up the Yentna River or some of these places where you're like, hey, come January, February, March, we haul all of our supplies with a snow machine sled. Keep that in mind if you're going to move off grid, because if you got to move building materials in and you got to haul a bunch of garbage out, there's always things to haul out. I mean, garbage bags, paint cans, all sorts of things that we're done with. You got to haul back to town. So you load that onto the float plane, or you wait till winter when you can drag it back to town with a snowmobile. So things to consider too. But I mean, we got, probably 20,000 pounds of lumber materials to build Joe's cabin. Yeah. And we only had to fly in a couple 100 pounds of stuff with a float plane because we thought ahead months and months and months in advance to haul in all the supplies and the lumber materials during the winter.
Yeah, and that's kind of having that wherewithal to kind of plan ahead really sounds like a necessity if you're going to be living off grid. There's not a whole lot of like last minute preparations you can do. Can't really be like, well, it's end of September. We better start chopping firewood now.
So I give Joe a hard time sometimes because he never throws anything away. He's a pack rat in the shop. He's got all sorts of buckets and boxes full of every little thing you can think of. I'm like, hey, there's an old lawnmower that needs to be hauled back out to town that doesn't work anymore. And he's like, hang on, before we haul it out to town, I got to take the casters off of it. I'm going to take the pull string off of it. The pull string could come in handy for a snowmobile pull string. Like he's gutting things, and then he like hoards it. But it's good because we can't just go to Lowe's or Home Depot. And then I'm like, you have one of those like weird shaped cotter pins and I doubt you do. He's like, yeah, of course I do. So, I mean, that kind of stuff comes in really handy, because at the end of September, in order for us, just a little side road about thinking ahead. At the end of September, the float planes stopped flying. We could nonstop charter helicopter flights, but to save some money, we try to think ahead and get us all the way to Christmas without going to town. So October, November, and December, we kind of batten down the hatches. We don't go to town. My wife tells all the relatives, if you want to get the kids something for Christmas, it's got to be in Alaska by the end of September. And so that, I mean, Bonnie, Joe's wife, and my wife, Alyssa, making a shopping list for 3 months it just blows my mind. It's so impressive every time that you're just like, why do we need 17 gallons of yogurt? You know, but then you're like, hey, come December, we still got some yogurt in the root cellar. So,
well, and on that note, as far as our wives making the grocery list for 3 months, that was a trial and error thing too for them. Mm-hmm. They have got it down to a science now. Yeah. It was perfect. Our last breakup list, I never, like the earlier ones, you start running out of things before you can get to town. And
we ran out before Thanksgiving one year.
You recognize it because you're like, there's no eggs, or we're not, how come we don't have any of this or that or whatever? It's like we ran out. But the last couple years, I haven't noticed any. I was like, man, it seems like we've got everything we need for 3 months. And so they've got it really dialed in, but it's taken a few years of them working together and like I said, trial and error. But a lot of planning goes into it.
Yeah, we didn't make it quite to Thanksgiving one year. It was one of the earlier years when all of us were out here and we're like, wow, we're going through groceries a lot quicker than we thought we would. We had to charter a helicopter. Yeah, we had to charter a helicopter to get more groceries in. So you got, let's say, $700 worth of stuff from Costco and $400 tacked on for the air taxi. And you're like, well, you know, you learn as we go. Yeah. Like Joe said, it's been 9 years, and every year is a little something new. I think we're starting to get it dialed in. Though.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so how much more battery do we got?
Oh, we got all sorts, man.
We're good. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Good deals. I got a couple more questions for you. For those of you in the audience, if you have any questions, concerns, objections, I'm going to give us about 10 more minutes here. So if you do have any questions, make sure to go and throw those in there, and we'll get to them as we're wrapping up. But real quick, let's go ahead and ask this question: how do you guys really go about?
We just saw ourselves in the camera. We're like, whoa! We just saw ourselves. It's scary.
So how do you guys prepare for winter, and how many backup plans do you guys have for emergencies? Because I've heard of, you guys planning ahead. So I'm assuming there's probably a lot of contingency plans for, something goes out with a generator or whatnot. So
to preface that, as far as planning for emergencies, the previous owner of the lodge told me I'm the kind of guy that goes fast. Like I have one speed when there's a project to do. And the previous owner was drilling into me. He kept saying, Joe, slow down. Joe, slow down. And when we first took over, I'm in my early 30s and I didn't receive that correction very well. I'm like, no, I have this speed. Let me work faster. And I learned very fast. You have just a couple of small accidents and you look at that and you go, oh, shoot, that could have been detrimental. Mm-hmm. Like I could have bled out there, or I could have, any number of things. And so I learned really fast to slow down. So, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, as the old saying goes. So we have all learned, and we even drill it into our kids, slow down. Mm-hmm. Like when you're chopping firewood, you're doing it intentionally. You're not just letting that axe swing wildly. Like every hit is intentional and aimed precisely. Whether you're running the chainsaw, I don't care what it is, whether it's a power tool, a hand tool, or just raking in the garden. You're thinking about what you're doing. You're putting a lot of thought into it. And so we do have emergency contingency plans. But a lot of that effort goes into prevention.
Yeah. Slow down, do it right the first time. Hey, can I reach that with the 6-foot ladder? Maybe, but in 5 minutes, I can go get the 8-foot ladder or the extension ladder and we can do it right. Or I just got to chop a couple pieces of wood. I'm going to chop some kindling. Okay. Just take a minute, go get your safety glasses. We don't need to be flying to the ER to get some chunk of wood out of your
Yeah.
eye. Like most accidents are preventable. So we've slowed down a lot we're not old yet, but we're slowing down in our old age on purpose.
Yeah.
And like Joe said, we're teaching our kids to do that too. So our backup plan, okay, let me think. There's a local pilot, flies a helicopter, and he goes, listen, I know, if something's life threatening, you got to call 911. But just so you know, if you call me anytime, day or night, if you broke your arm, broke your leg, something that's terrible but not life threatening, just call me. I'll come get you. I don't care what time, So that's really nice of him. I mean, there's room for error there, room for human error as far as like, hey, that's all fine and dandy, but it's pitch black and it's 10 o'clock at night or whatever. But in a good situation where he could come help us, like, oh man, I dislocated my shoulder, and they could fly us to the local clinic, that would be great. We have insurance for calling 911 would send a life med helicopter out here. We have insurance for that. That's something that, you got to think of. We don't have health benefits out here from some employers, so we all had to start thinking about that for ourselves. So a life med helicopter can fly in really bad weather, fly anytime, day or night. They can fly IFR, which is instrument. They can fly by instrument, not by visual. So yeah, something we hope we never have to call 911.
Before we came out to the lodge and started it, when we knew we were going to purchase it and take it over, all four of us adults out here, Zach and I and Bonnie, my wife, and Alyssa, Zach's wife, we took a wilderness survival training course
and wilderness first aid.
Wilderness first aid. That's a better way to say it. It was a first aid class put on by a professional EMT, but he kind of tailored it for our lifestyle, which would be off-grid wilderness type of stuff, using things improv if you don't have the right tool or implement or whatever. And then we've also, to add on to that, we've acquired many first aid items. Some that are more, let's say, like a tourniquet, ones that military people would use, or that quick clot type of stuff for those quick, don't have any other option. Yeah. So we have a pretty extensive emergency kit out here, a first aid kit. But like Zach said, then there's the helicopter option through that friend, or the life med flight are the worst case scenarios.
I think it's kind of, you could get yourself into a bad situation chopping wood and need quick clot because you're like, hey, the helicopter's not going to be here in an hour,
right?
And you could get yourself in a bad situation with a bear too, like we were talking about earlier. And I think it might work in our favor because Joe and I are not thrill seekers, so we're not interested in being like, hey, look, hey, watch, I'm going to jump off the roof. Like we've never done stuff like that. So being able to be a little more slow and methodic was the way we were raised. And so it's come in really handy being out here. If you're not that way, you'll learn to be that way, or you will get yourself in trouble.
We should hit the first part of this question too. How do we prepare for winter?
I was wondering if we did we hit the first part with like, preparing the grocery list?
I think we've really kind of answered it, kind of sprinkled throughout here. So I think we're good on that.
Yeah. I mean, getting ready to haul water off the lake because our spring line is officially winterized, all of that kind of stuff. That's a big part of preparing for winter. Other than that, we just kind of go through the motions. We go through our list every year, clean the chimneys, prepare the snowmobiles, just, I don't know. It's we're not gonna bore you with the list, but it's huge.
Yeah. Put the garden to sleep, cover the strawberries, put plywood up on the north side of the porch so that it doesn't drift a bunch of snow in, that kind of stuff. It's just pretty simple stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what have been some of the most challenging moments for y'all so far? Like, are there any that really just kind of stand out?
Trying to think.
Well, my get out of jail free card is usually Joe. Okay, so we work well together. A lot of people ask, "Oh, you brothers, how you work well together?" I could never do that with my sibling. Joe, we don't always get along, but for the most part, we're both pretty easygoing. I'm the business guy, and so while I'm sitting at the computer answering emails and dealing with the website and dealing with all the back end stuff, Joe's out in the shop mechanicking on a snowmobile, or he's, he hooked up our whole solar panel system. So he wouldn't make money without me, but the lodge wouldn't work without him. And so, we complement each other. So I have gotten away with so many challenging moments because Joe's just a handyman when it comes to stuff like that. But I don't know, probably living without solar panels for the first few years was like more of a challenge.
Yeah, I would say, as Zach was talking, I thought something came to mind. Actually, the first couple years out here, when it was just my wife and I, one of them, probably the most challenging thing, was the learning curve of driving and riding a snowmobile. For Alaskans, we call them snow machines. For everybody else, they call them snowmobile. And almost anything with an engine I take to pretty fast, whether it's heavy equipment, dump trucks, snowmobile, motorcycle, four-wheeler. There's a learning curve to some of the things, but I can take to it pretty fast.
I wish we had a highlight reel of all of us getting used to driving a snow machine.
I love motorized equipment. But my wife wasn't used to riding a snowmobile at all. And so we'd go out on trail rides, we'd go out to get firewood. And that was the big challenge. And you can probably tell, you viewers, that Zach and I we're not prone to using foul language. Well, those couple winters I did.
Unless you're learning to ride a snowmobile.
It did not go well. It was kind of an impromptu marriage counseling, like workshop / almost ready to separate type of divorce type of thing. It was bad. It was bad. And I would yell at my wife, or do this or do that. Why didn't you do this? And she's like, I'm trying. And just one of those things. And just as a real quick example, so a snowmobile gets stuck, and we don't have these high dollar powder sleds that do really good in the deep snow. Most of our machines out here are good on a packed trail. You take them off in the deep powdery snow and they just get stuck. So it's inevitable to run into that every now and again, the deep powdery snow. And if you know what you're doing, you can kind of work your way out of it and avoid it. And like I said, my wife, there was a learning curve there, so she would get stuck. And all right, so the procedure is, you pack down some snow right next to the track, and then you would lift the back end of the snowmobile onto that packed snow, and then you would have the rider gun it like full throttle, while the other person kind of gives it a tug from the front ski, and that's the best way to kind of get it unstuck. There's a few other methods, but that's long and short how you can do it. And she would be worried about running over the top of me or hitting me or whatever else. And so she would gun it for like half a second, and it would move 3 feet and then get stuck again. And I'd be like, why didn't you go? So it required a lot of physical labor to get these things unstuck. It wasn't just an easy, get it unstuck. It was a lot of physical labor, and you're full on snow clothes. Now you're working hard, so you're sweating. So you're starting to strip your snow clothes off so you don't sweat. And, you can kind of see how the rest of this goes. It happened over and over. And I got stuck my fair share of times too, but it was having that experience of rider and helper trying to get that thing unstuck that really, really was challenging. I will say, now my wife's a pro. She's a baller on a snowmobile. Like, she rarely ever gets stuck because she knows when to give it gas and when to go full throttle. So she's a good rider now.
Yeah, we've all learned a lot when it comes to snowmobile riding. If you want to go out and have any fun, you got to stand up, move your body around. I would think the challenges that I faced while Joe's talking, I'm thinking, I don't think so much about physical challenges. I think moving off grid has made for a lot of mental challenges. Number one I learned is weather, the weather, the elements. Weather is king. And when you can't do something that you want to do because it's raining or it's snowing or the fog is so thick that you can't see the lake from the house, and the light is so flat and glary that you can't find the snowmobile trail, that's really frustrating. And then you're like, well, we had scheduled to go into town and you make all these appointments, so the kids got to go to their dentist checkups or all these kind of things, and then you got to get on the phone and cancel everything because it was 10 below zero the morning you were scheduled to go into town. And the kids, you just can't ride on a snowmobile for an hour and a half when it's 10 below zero. Or like when we're just trying to get chores done. We're going down into the forest to get firewood, and there's a big bull moose in the trail that just won't move. And you're just like, you know what? I don't need this today. Yeah. But you can't control it. So I think knowing that you're not in charge, you feel a lot smaller when you live off grid, when you just, you're just not in charge.
If you like being in control, like what Zach is saying, you really have to learn how to let part of that go. Because what Zach said, weather is king out here, takes on a whole new meaning. Maybe you've heard that term before or phrase, maybe you haven't. But when you live off grid, the weather outside, rain, snow, hail, sleet, whatever it is, it really dictates a lot of what you can and what you can't do. In town, when you have a doctor's appointment or whatever else, usually the weather doesn't, maybe once or twice a year if there's an ice storm or the roads are shut down because it's crazy. That's rare. But typically you hop in your vehicle and you go to do what you're going to do. Out here, not so much the case. The weather will stop you in your tracks, literally, and you have to wait until the weather clears. So you really have to yield to that and do what it allows you to do.
Yeah. Outstanding. So a couple more questions here, and I'll let you guys go ahead and get to dinner with your family. So we'll get you out of here in just a couple minutes. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about living off grid that you guys can see? Because there seems to be a lot of misconceptions flying around out there. So we'll let you guys take it from there.
What are some of the biggest, your audio was choppy, so I'm going to read it real quick. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about living off grid? I'll start with this one because it's top of my head while Joe maybe thinks of something else. We were razzed, made fun of, chastised, whatever the word, pretty hard when we thought we were so excited about living off grid. We're going to start sharing our life through Facebook and YouTube and stuff. And people were so mean on social media, like so mean, it hurt my feelings. People were like, you are not off grid. You guys are posers. Look, you can see the generator right there in the background. Look at all those wires running up the top of your roof there. You're not off grid. And we're like, well,
dude,
I don't know if we have the same definition of off grid. So like a common misconception, I guess. I don't think it's common, but some people really had a problem with it. If we talked about, changing the oil in the generator. Oh yeah, you Bramante Brothers think you're off grid with that Honda generator. And so it's just weird stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can be off grid. Yeah. So Joe handles it a lot better than I do. I'm like, oh yeah, you think so?
So we actually did a YouTube video specifically talking about that. And I guess at that point you have to determine what the term off grid means, right?
Yeah.
I've got a good friend that even told us we got solar now and the battery bank and all that. And he's like, well, you guys are on grid. He said, and I'm like, no, we're not. And he goes, you're on your own grid. Okay. Semantics.
We've created a grid.
We've created a grid. When I think of off grid, that means you're not connected to the same sewer lines, water lines, power lines that the mass populace is connected to.
Yeah. Right.
You've
or
created
the roads for that matter.
Or the roads, exactly.
Yeah, you could live right downtown Anchorage and, go to, use an outhouse in your backyard and have solar panels on your roof and be off grid. But it is one step even further. Yeah. And we didn't feel like we got to a point where we didn't feel like we needed to justify ourselves, but we're like, oh yeah, why don't you drive your car up here and talk to me like that? So, it's just like, I don't know how much more off grid you could be, but there is, when people ask if we're self-reliant, no.
Yeah,
absolutely not. We still rely on those trips to town we're not making our own toilet paper, and we're not the Susitna Valley is not as great at garden growing as the Matanuska Valley closer to Anchorage. So we've tried so hard to plant a big garden and be more self-reliant. So I think you have to know the difference between self-reliant and off-grid living.
A big difference,
completely different.
A big difference to that, what Zach is talking about. I think my wife and I were discussing this as far as the garden is concerned. I think if we put a lot of effort into it, we could grow a lot more produce and vegetables out here for ourselves. But the big thing that's different for us than your typical off-grid people is we run a business 4 months of the year. That takes most of our time. And so the ladies, and sometimes Zach and I will plant something. We'll start plants from seed, put them in the greenhouse, and then when the time is right, put them in the ground outside. And then tourist season starts, and all of that goes to the back burner because we literally have no time. Now our kids are getting to the age to where they're helping out watering the garden, they're helping out weeding, and that's about all the love our garden gets because we're so busy. So if we didn't operate a business out here as the lodge, maybe we would be a lot more self-reliant, growing a lot of our own foods, hunting and doing all that kind of stuff.
Hunting, fishing, chickens, goats, bees. It all could be on the table if we didn't run the business.
Right.
We by choice have chosen not to balance that. So, but anyways, that's just us personally. I don't know if that answered your question about misconceptions, but if anyone wants to come up to Alaska, get we've got 2 generators. We've got a pretty good sized solar panel system, average, by some people's standards. I don't know. I mean, I think the common misconceptions is if you live off grid, what's your shower like? What's your bathroom like? Is my wife going to be up for it? Is my partner going to share in this passion with me? And it doesn't mean you have to live in a tent, like we've got, it's cush out here, and it's taken a lot of hard work to get it that way. But when our guests go use the shower, turn on the heater, we've got an oven, bacon, and I don't know. Misconception, another one could be that you just think you have to rough it. And I don't know. I think you can make life nowadays.
That's what I was going to say.
Modern day off-grid living.
Yes. A big difference than 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Modern day off-grid living is what you want it to be. It depends on how much money you have to put into it.
Well, my wife homeschools our 2 kids, 2 of our 3 kids that are old enough. And if she has a question, she calls the school district contact teacher that helps her. We've got internet. The kids don't have to lick a stamp and put it in the mail like the previous owner's son had to do back in the early 90s. Yeah. Everything's sent in over internet. We're able to live stream on YouTube off grid. Yeah. I'm watching my battery bar go down because we don't have a power source in this building. But I mean, for the most part, it's modernized,
Yeah.
but we're not self-reliant, but it can definitely be comfortable, I
Yeah.
think.
Right. I mean, one thing that I've kind of noticed just talking a little bit with folks that are wanting to do the off-grid thing is it all just kind of comes down to what it is that you want to do, and you kind of have to define that for yourself.
Yeah.
Just before coming over here, like I was lifting weights over at the gym, and there's some high schoolers over there just like cranking away on these weights, like I don't know, lat pull down was like 160 or something like that. And I was like, oh man, I only do like 130. Maybe I should go and like up my weights. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Just do your workout. Do your workout, or you're going to throw your back out.
Yeah,
old
exactly.
Man. Like,
Do.
So yeah, the same way,
Yep.
just live your
Yep.
lifestyle.
Do what you're comfortable with.
Do what you're comfortable with, and
Yeah.
don't get obsessed with trying to be the most of anything, really. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. If anybody wants an inside look, not at like an authority on off-grid living, but if anyone wants an off-grid and an inside look of how we've done it the past 5 years, that's where our YouTube channel we used as a source to show people, especially relatives, hey, this is a day in the life. And then it just kind of took off. I mean, didn't go viral or anything, but it doesn't mean we're experts on anything. But it got a lot easier for Joe and I to just not reply to rude comments, because we didn't claim to be an authority on stuff. So it's just like, hey, this is how we're doing it. Thanks for tuning in. And that's just kind of how it came to be. So I don't want anybody, giving you a hard time or anything about having some posers on for the off-grid episode, because we don't claim to be like top-notch authorities. We've just had a blast doing it, and we decided to put videos out to show how we did it. But we had this one guy give Joe a hard time just a couple days ago about not having a well, so the women didn't have to we didn't have to haul water for laundry. And I'm like, well, if he watched any of our more recent videos, he would understand that we've tried digging a well for 2 years in a row, and it's just not working. And we're not the authority. Don't tune into our channel to learn how to dig a well in the Alaska bush, because we failed. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the definitely want to go check out their channel, because they have a ton of information in there. And I mean, wherever you are in your journey, chances are they've probably done it or have experience in that area. So you're definitely cheating yourself out if you don't go check out that channel. Yeah, absolutely. All right, couple easy questions here. So number one, what's the elevation for the Caribou Lodge?
2,100 feet, 2,100 feet.
Awesome. All right. Next one, from Seattle Crime Gal. Do your wives cook together, canned foods, etc.?
100%.
Yeah. I call Bonnie, Joe's wife, I call Bonnie our master chef. They always work together in the kitchen. It's incredible watching them work and not step on each other or get on each other's nerves all summer. But they do cook together. They are the chefs for the lodge. In the off season, we have scrounge nights where it's like, hey, what's for dinner? And they're like, whatever you're cooking, because we're not cooking. So they definitely, take time off.
Yeah.
But we've actually got not much on the YouTube channel, but there are a couple times when they were canning blueberries and making their own jam and stuff. So they're just a little house on the prairie.
Occasionally we're fortunate enough to get to town and go with maybe a friend to go salmon fishing or dip netting. And so we've canned up they have canned up quite a bit of our salmon. The moose that we were blessed with last year, we canned up quite a bit of that moose meat also.
Yeah, canned moose meat is great. They've got a water bath canner and a pressure canner. I don't know how that all works, but yes, they are amazing cooks and they do it year round. We don't even haul in pre-made loaves of bread. We haul in flour, yeast, honey, salt, all that kind of stuff, and we make about 400 to 500 loaves of bread a year.
Wow.
Most of that is just during the summer months when we're busy with tourists, but yeah, a lot of bread, sourdough bread, French bread, all that stuff gets made. The lodge always smells good, so yeah, they're always up to something. Yeah,
Got your own bakery out there.
Oh man.
And there's a full cookie jar and a full biscotti jar all summer, and I only ate like 2 cookies all summer. Like it takes a lot of self-control.
Yeah. The local pilots and locals that kind of are affiliated with the lodge, they all know about our homemade biscotti. It is top notch.
We have to send out the biscotti with the pilots because, yeah, the people at the office keep asking about them and stuff. So, yeah,
that's how you bribe your way anywhere.
That's right. That's right.
We can pay you in biscotti.
You just open up your coat and you're like, I've got some goods, some biscotti, you know.
Maybe we'll work out a deal.
Yeah.
All right. Got a question from Mr. John Hamilton. Can you get fuel or propane delivered from the air taxi service?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the pilots don't like doing it, but they do it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a service they provide, but it's scary because it's like you're flying a bomb. So gas jugs go in the floats of a big enough airplane. You put them in the floats so you're not stinking up the cockpit. And then several years ago, we were able to start hauling in our own propane with snowmobile sleds, which the local pilots thanked us a lot because trying to balance an empty, so the little skinny, I wouldn't say they're little, but the skinny propane cylinders that weigh about 170 pounds when they're full, it's awkward to get them on a float plane when they're empty. But when they're full, it can kind of be dangerous. You know, you could hurt yourself. And they've rolled off the dock into not for us, but they can roll off the dock into the water. Then you're fishing them out of the lake. So, but they will do it. We've definitely had them do it in the past. It's awesome when they can, but you got to fly out several $100s worth of propane, and then you got to tack the air taxi service fee onto that. And so we have
transitioned into hauling most all of our propane and gasoline in the winter months with a snowmobile, like Zach was saying, because it saves us a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah, I can definitely get that. I mean, you kind of talk about the pretty much flying a bomb when you're doing that. It makes sense. I mean, especially if you're going a little higher, then pressure starts becoming a factor. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they've got those they've got the little things on the nozzles that can start spitting to release more pressure as they get higher, and then the cockpit starts smelling like propane and
not a fun
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
No.
But the bigger planes, they'll roll barrels of heating oil, kerosene, diesel fuel. I mean, remote Alaska relies a lot on fuel getting flown around. We personally just try to avoid it. And ever since we've got the solar panels hooked up, we've flown in like a fraction of the gasoline, which has been nice too.
Yeah, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
All right. So one more question here from A-Link. If this hasn't been discussed yet, how are the kids doing with living off grid? Any specific challenges, things you'd like to be different for them?
Well, I'll start with my kids. I have 3. Joe has 1. I've got 2 that are 10 and 8, and they're best friends. They always play together. The previous owners had a single child, and he got cabin fever. He'd get lonely. Mom and dad would let him watch one. He said, I watched one of 3 movies. That's all I ever owned as a kid. And one of them was Babe, and so I'd pop it in the little black and white VCR player TV combo. My kids have it easier out here. Family movie night. We make it a special deal. Uncle Joe pops popcorn and they get to pick out a movie. Advice years ago to make sure that
Sorry, guys, you're kind of breaking up a little bit. All right. Zach, Joe, can you guys hear me? All right, folks. So I'm going to give them a couple of minutes here, just to make sure we for sure lost them. But I think there's a pretty good chance that I think their internet cut out. You know, just with living so remote, that definitely does happen. Before we go, though, I did want to just again share the kind of the Caribou Lodge website over here. If you guys haven't visited up here in Alaska before, then this is definitely something you need to go check out. They kind of mentioned all the stuff that they do during the summertime. They've got some great packages, and I mean, just look at that view and everything that you can do out there. So if you've been thinking about coming up and maybe living somewhere more remote, maybe you're wanting to do something like you're self-sustaining, maybe you're wanting something remote but not quite that much, then this is definitely a great option for you to at least come up here and take a look before you make that leap. But you know what? Looks like we got them here.
Are you there?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, wasn't sure if we were going to lose you or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Nothing. I mean, it just decided to act up. The off-grid Wi-Fi, all we have is a hotspot with AT&T, and we got this little Wi-Fi booster that we point toward a tower, and we hope it works. So obviously it didn't work. Okay, so kids being out here off-grid. Cabin fever has set in from time to time, but the advice we got years ago about making certain days of the week special. Monday through Friday, you got to do school. Let the weekend with a family movie night. Saturday, we wake up and have a special breakfast. And, Sunday, we're going to do something fun like family day, like let's go for a hike or let's go sledding. So then the kids, mentally, it really helps to have something to look forward to. And then homeschooling has been great. I think whether we lived out here or in town, we would still homeschool. Homeschool programs through the state of Alaska are top notch. The allotment that they give each student has been a huge blessing for us to get the curriculum we need. The Wi-Fi, they can send their work samples in back and forth. But let me see if I'm answering his question here. How are the kids doing? Okay, so sometimes I would think that they're missing out on certain things, maybe swimming lessons or gymnastics or even how to ride a bike. Because learning how to ride a bike on the tundra, we don't even have a bike out here. Yeah. So when we're in town or we're traveling out of state to visit family, we bought them bikes, and it's like, all right, let's learn how to ride a bike before we go home. The school program paid for swimming lessons. Yeah. And, I don't know. We ask them, we want them to be candid. If they're answering a question with one of our tourists, we get tourists from all over the world, and our kids are really good at carrying on a conversation with people with German accents, Japanese accents, Australians, like everything. My kids can actually carry on a conversation. And we don't like to interject because I think that would look weird when the tourists are like, excuse me, I was talking to your daughter, not you. And so we want to look them in the eye, answer their questions. And I think they genuinely enjoy it. And I think they're at an age now where they want to be playing outside. School's done, and they're like, Mom, we're going to go down by the root cellar, because down by the root cellar, they just made a fort a couple of weeks ago. So they're just doing normal kid stuff with their cousin, which is Joe's daughter. And the thing that we don't know yet is how the kids, especially girls, 2 of mine are girls and Joe has a girl, how that's going to look in 5 or 10 years when, living off grid isn't just all about playing outside and stuff, and they start getting into makeup and hair and wanting to go to college or whatever that is. So we're just going to take that a day at a time. But as of right now, it's they seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah. I would say with my daughter, we ask her, and I know Zach and Alyssa ask their kids the same thing all the time. It's like, how are you guys doing? Do you love it out? Do you? And they really do. They say they really love it out here. And one of the good ways to tell that they're not just saying the answer that they think we want to hear. We'll go to town for a few days. Whether it's in winter or summer or whatever, to get supplies, or like Zach was saying, we will go visit family out of state. And oftentimes our kids will say, they have a blast. They, like Zach was saying, they get swimming lessons or learn how to ride a bike, and they love spending time with their cousins out of state. But inevitably you'll get them saying, when are we going home? Like, I want to go home. And so that is a telltale sign for us that they really do appreciate our life out here. Yeah. And it makes us feel good. I mean, there are definitely some experiences that they are missing out on. And we try to fill those when we go on vacation. But for the most part, it's going great right now. And like Zach was saying, that might change in 4 to 5, 6 years. But
our oldest brother, there's 3 Bramante brothers and 1 Bramante sister. Our oldest brother told us years ago, reevaluate every year and just make sure you're still thriving out there. And I think it's taken us a few years to actually hit a good groove and fall into a rhythm where I think we're doing better than we even were a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Solar panels are installed, and it's just like the kids can walk into the bathroom to brush their teeth and flip a light switch on, and the lights actually work now. So like, I don't know, things for the most part seem pretty normal for them and their childhood. And then every time we go into town, which is not very often, actually we're going to town. Actually, the float plane's coming to get us tomorrow, but we have not been to town. My family personally have not been to town since April. So we don't get to town very often, but when we do, they're excited to see their friends, and we got to, stop in and see people. And that's part of the gig, going into town for supplies. And all right, we got to stop here and see them. And here, and the kids love that too. They're kind of little celebrities when they go into town. My oldest daughter ran into someone like near Walmart, and he's like, I think I recognize you. And she's like, oh, from YouTube. And he's like, no, I know your dad. And so, they're like, they think they're little celebrities in town. So.
My daughter just asked me today, we're getting ready to go on a little vacation here. And she goes, Dad, well, and to preface this, she's excited about going on vacation. But she said, Dad, why do we go on vacation? And I said, well, kind of a 4-year-old's question. Like, how do I answer that? Well, I said, well, for 4 months during the summer when the tourists come, I said, we work our butts off, and I said, and it's nice to just get a little bit of a little break. And I could see her little wheels turning in her head, and she's kind of like, why do we need to go anywhere?
Why do we need a break?
Why do we need a break? So, but yeah, it's I think they're really enjoying it out here at this stage of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that was really solid advice from your older brother too, to reevaluate every year, just make sure it's still clicking for everybody. But
yeah,
I mean, it looks like
shout
you guys
out to Jeremiah. I know he's probably watching. Love you, bro.
Yeah, the oldest brother.
Yeah, but I mean, right now it looks like you guys are locking and rocking just fine. So, all right, well, we've got y'all's website right over here, and for those of you who are interested in trying to kind of explore the off-grid, self-sustaining, however you want to define it, this is probably a great opportunity for you to go hang out in Caribou Lodge for a little bit, kind of get a feel for what it's actually like, because there's what you can gather on YouTube or wherever it is that you're watching this stuff or learning about it, and then there's actually going and experiencing it. So I mean, advise people all the time, go live in an Airbnb wherever you're wanting to go, just to get a good feel for it. If you want to do something more off grid, this is going to be the equivalent. So you need to go check out the Caribou Lodge. When do you guys like schedule tourists for coming in? Like, people are wanting to come and visit. When should they plan for that?
Well, we're always taking bookings. We already got some dates filled up for 2024. So booking happens year round, but the summer season is going to be June through early September.
Outstanding.
And it's again, like I said earlier on, it's the facade of what Alaska looks like. Jamin, Alaska doesn't always look like that picture you have up on the screen 12 months out of the year. So people want to come and see the beautiful part of Alaska that they see on all the tourism websites, and that's June through September. Yeah.
Okay. Outstanding. All right. Well, gentlemen, do you have anything else you'd like to share, or anything else you feel like needs to be said?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of topics. It's been fun. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, we rambled. I think we answered everyone's questions, but you're doing great as a real estate agent. And if you're getting more questions about off-grid living, we're happy to help you even behind the scenes with what we know. And if people want a little taste of off-grid living with kids, it's not a plug for our YouTube channel. We don't make any money off of it, but watching the videos of all of us, like, you look through the thumbnails and you see, hey, there's one that involves their children. Living off grid with kids is totally doable. Our brother, our oldest brother says, my wife would never do what your wives do. So make sure you're on the same page as a whole family, or your partner or your kids, before you move off grid. And I don't know, it's pretty first class out here. So yeah, I don't know. We have fun doing it, but if anybody's thinking about doing it, I don't know. I think, like Jamin said, come up here, get an Airbnb. You think, oh man, this property in Fairbanks is lovely. You may, want to know what Fairbanks feels like in the winter before you settle on that, versus somewhere closer to the ocean, which is more temperate climate and stuff. But
and if you don't have the luxury of like being in the location that you're looking for a year or more, if you can only stay in an Airbnb for a few days or a week, talk to the locals about the weather. Like, going back to what we were saying earlier, weather is king. If you're going to live off grid, weather is going to impact you a lot. And so talk to the locals when you're there about what's typical, what's average. And obviously every year is going to bring something a little bit different as far as the amount of snow or the temperature ranges. But you can get a pretty good idea about talking to the locals of what to expect when it comes to weather and the seasons. When does winter actually start? Because I was just talking to my cousin down in California the other day, and she goes, yeah, what's your temperature there? And I said, oh, it got to 25 degrees Fahrenheit last night. Oh, wow. I said, yeah, winter's right around the corner. And she goes, really? We just started fall. I said, well, our fall is over and we're starting winter. So, depending on where you're at in Alaska, from southeast, down the Kenai, or even the Panhandle, all the way up to Fairbanks, you've got a wide range of climate and different weather. So
yeah, Fairbanks is a heck of a lot closer to the Arctic Circle than Juneau is.
Yeah.
And we get 2 months more winter than Anchorage does.
Yeah.
Right here at the lodge. So yeah, things to consider if you're going to move off grid in Alaska. You need to learn to like shoveling snow. That's probably if you don't love it already, you gotta invest in some good snow removal equipment.
Yeah,
because that's going to become a pastime for you very quickly.
That will be a pastime. Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, just real quick, Tucker says hi.
Hey, Tucker.
That's the Bramante brother nephew right there. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, and Jeremiah says love you guys too. So
There he is.
That's a good way to end. All right. Well, guys, again, thank you very much for being generous with your time and kind of talking about your experiences and, you know, what it's actually like kind of living more of this off-grid lifestyle. I really appreciate you guys kind of sharing that. And again, for those of you who are considering doing something like this, again, I would kind of push you towards going checking it out. The Caribou Lodge. We'll have links for that in the description section below of this video when we do post it on YouTube. So make sure to go take advantage of that. But you know, you guys are family men, so I know it's well past dinner time. So I'm going to let you guys get going. Yeah. But again, thank you, and you have a great night.
All right, thanks, Jamin. Awesome. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Hey, my pleasure. You guys have a good one.
All right, take care. You too.